This is Work University, episode 30. This is Work University, and I'm Annalisa Felix. This is where I interview people from various employment backgrounds and get the inside scoop on what their job is really like. If you're just getting into the workforce, or if you're curious about getting into something new, listen up. Hello, today I am speaking with Sarah Falk. Sarah is a licensed clinical social worker, and we'll be getting to know more about what that means today. So, Sarah, thank you for meeting with me today.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so let's jump right in. What is the day-to-day of a licensed clinical social worker?
Well, that is a big question because it really depends on what field you're in. And this is one of the reasons I might be jumping ahead and answering future questions, but one of the reasons I chose a master's in social work is because the options and the opportunities are so diverse for someone with a master's in social work, and especially someone who has a clinical licensure or an advanced licensure in social work. So for me, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because if we look at the word social worker, I'm just, I don't know anything about it other than you probably go into, different cases and just kind of check up on them and see how they do. Would that be the general perception, and can you kind of work from there?
Right. That is a general perception, and I've found too that people often associate, and I guess what you are explaining is case management. And so oftentimes people will think of social work as strictly case management, but that is not the only thing that we can do. And case management could be done in a social setting. So, social services as far as community-based. It could be hospital-based. It could be based in the schools. And so there is an amount of case management which would be linking the clients or the patients to resources, community resources. Mm-hmm. Right. But there are a multitude of other things that social workers can do. And so for me, I've worked in various areas in the field, but now I have my own private practice, and so I do individual and group therapy.
So some people would come in, or do you visit them, or is it a phone call? Well, right now it's probably more online, but say if we were, a few months ago, do you go visit their homes, or do they come and visit you?
They come and visit me. So they're typically looking for counseling for, any given issue. And so they will call. I'm in a group practice called Keystone Counseling. And so they'll call, and they may have heard something from me, or I've been in it long enough now where a lot of my referrals are word of mouth. So people will say, my friend told me I really should contact you. I'm having panic attacks. Can we schedule a session? So then I'll just schedule them and get them started. And then typically it's a weekly or bi-weekly basis. They'll come into my office and we will meet and kind of work toward their goals.
So are you like a therapist?
I am a therapist, yes.
Okay. So then, you kind of cover a lot then, I guess. Your umbrella, a lot of different hats. Would that be correct?
Yes, and especially in private practice because you are a business owner, and so you have to do, I own my business. You could work for someone who would provide like the billing service, the scheduling service, and et cetera. I chose to work for myself. So I do all of the billing. I do all of the scheduling.
Right.
And so, yes, you have the business owner hat, and then you have the therapist hat. So it is interesting to own your own business that way, and just learning how to incorporate the business side and the therapeutic side.
So if we go back and maybe kind of step back a little bit and just look at the word social worker, what does that really mean? Because you said it could be case management, it could be for different groups of people, but if for somebody looking like a student, if they wanted to get into social work, but they're not even sure what that means, where could they start off?
Absolutely. So one of the most valuable, in my opinion, this is all my opinion, but
Sure.
One of the most valuable undergraduate degrees, I think, is a BSW, a Bachelor's in Social Work, because even at a bachelor's level, you can already get into so many different areas of the field of social work. Oftentimes in some other career paths, I think that you automatically have to go for those advanced degrees. And I think with a bachelor's in social work, you're already, you can already have access to some of these positions in the field of social work. But from a bachelor's in social work, you could have a bachelor's in anything really, and then go in for your master's of social work. And what's great about that is, again, I think it opens you up to many different things. When I went into my master's program, I thought, one day I want to be a full-time therapist with my own business. But then I faltered a little bit, because all of these opportunities, these different opportunities kind of revealed themselves. So you could, if you wanted to be a school social worker and work in the schools, you could do that and work with kids and their parents. Mm-hmm. And if you wanted to be in the hospital and work with patients, you could do home care, which I've done. You could do mm-hmm. hospice, which I've done. Mm-hmm. You could do community mental health, which is like a day program or an intensive outpatient program where people come for group therapy almost all day long. They're there just to manage their chronic symptoms.
Mm-hmm. Is there ever a situation where you could do community hospital and schools all at the same time and kind of work your schedule that way, or do you have to focus on one at a time?
That would be very hard to do, because when you were in the schools, that's a full-time job. A lot of times, like when I worked for home care, I was doing home visits, and I worked 20 hours per week. So that was a nice way to kind of transition into my private practice, where I had a steady paycheck with my home care, the agency work, and mm-hmm. then I was able to build up my business on the other days. So you can work things like that, but I think that it would be difficult to go all in on medical, all in on educational. So you kind of pick your field. That doesn't mean that once you get started, you can't transition elsewhere, because that's fairly easy to do.
Okay, so you'd want to maybe focus on one, and then if you like, you can move to different ones. But in the beginning, if I had my BSW and I was getting into social work for, visiting, people at home, what does that really mean? Do you come in with equipment? Do you come in with a folder? Do you come in just chit-chat with them? Like, what is it that I'm going to see when I do these home visits?
Good. So everything is electronic medical record now. So you would probably go in with your laptop, and everything needs to be documented. So when you go in, you're assessing the patient's needs, and that could be, financial, it could be medical, it could be emotional, could be spiritual, whatever the needs are, and then you try to link them with those resources in the community. So if they are having trouble buying groceries, you want to see if they've applied for all of the programs that are available, so that they could either get Meals on Wheels, or perhaps an increase in their food stamps, or different programs that would be suitable for their situation. If mm-hmm. they're sad because they went into a nursing home and had to give away their family pet, maybe you arrange to have a pet therapist come in, mm-hmm. a community therapist with their pet come in and bring the certified therapy dog in to meet with your patient, or mm-hmm. a music therapist, or, you just try to, again, just really link the patient to the resources that are going to improve their situation, meet their needs, and you're the person to do it.
Right. So I guess when you're going in and making these recommendations, and they're pretty solid recommendations, I guess there are people who can follow through and come back the next time and you're like, okay, great. But what about the ones that don't move forward or don't, how do you deal with that? And do you ever get emotionally attached to some of these cases?
Yes, you do get emotionally attached. I would imagine, I haven't met anyone who has said, oh no, I'm never emotionally affected.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's like learning any other form of work or business, in my opinion, where you have to recognize where to set healthy boundaries so that you don't take everything home with you or you don't take everything on yourself. Mm-hmm. If you're feeling overloaded, if you're feeling the weight of the world on your shoulders because of your caseload or because of your clients, then that is a telltale sign that you are burning out because you are holding everything and there isn't the healthy boundaries aren't there. And so, I am a firm believer that counseling is for everyone, therapy
mm-hmm. is
for everyone. And so oftentimes I think therapists will forget that they need to talk to someone too.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Because we're helping. So those of us in the helping professions, we're like, well, I'm the helper. I don't need help. I'm the helper, but we mm-hmm. do need help. So I think, recognizing when it's time to back away a bit is important and just set those healthy boundaries. Yeah. And it's something you learn.
Mm-hmm. So in the life of a social worker, it sounds like a lot of things can be happening at once and changing from day to day, year to year. Do you have to keep up any annual certifications, studies, and so forth?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, so for a master's level social worker you start out, after you get your master's degree, you start out with a limited license, and it's different state to state. So mm-hmm. I'm in Illinois, and in Illinois, you have a limited license. So I was a licensed social worker for the first 2 years. You have to have, and I know they just changed this, I believe it's 3,000 supervised hours of work in the field. And after that point, you can take your clinical licensure exam. And when you have your clinical licensure, that opens up even more opportunities for you. For instance, I was not able to have my own private practice under the limited license. You have to have your clinical licensure before you can work independently that way.
So the BSW by itself is just the license, but the clinical is the one that's kind of a step up and more opportunity.
So with a BSW, you cannot get the clinical licensure. You start with your bachelor's in social work, and then you mm-hmm. would get your master's in social work. Then you would work for 2 years under the limited license, and then you could take your clinical exam. So really, it is quite a process if you want to if you want to own your own business and have a private practice. It does take some time. There are some steps. And once you get your clinical licensure, you're required to keep up on continuing education. So mm-hmm. every 2 years, you have to update your licensure and have X number of, and again, it's different state to state,
right.
X number of continuing education credits.
Are there any situations that have happened where you had to call somebody else in to assist, say, police, or have, it got kind of rowdy, because I would think that it's a little scary going into someone's home.
Yes, that was scary. I serviced the Chicagoland area when I was doing home care and hospice. And so there are neighborhoods that you end up going into that you're not familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be a little anxiety producing, but
Mm-hmm.
I myself I've never had an issue. I've had times when I did feel a little uneasy, but never unsafe,
Mm-hmm.
if that makes sense.
Are you taught any kind of, I don't know, for lack of a better word, tips and tricks on what to do in these different situations?
No, in fact, I have attended a couple different like self-defense trainings just for myself throughout the years, but have never had to use it.
Right.
I think when people understand that you're there to help them, 9 times out of 10, they're going to, work with you. That's not always the case. There's still that one out of 10 who is going to be a little resistant, or maybe their family called on their behalf and they're like, I don't know what you're doing here. I don't need you.
Oh.
Yeah. So, and I think, the emotional connection, when you're doing case management, sometimes it's easier to be disconnected because you're in there once or twice and then you're moving on. So you're in there to assess the needs and connect them with their resources, and then you're moving on. When you have a private practice, you're seeing these people week after week, and typically you want to try, if you can resolve the matter and resolve their issues and help them meet their goals in, several sessions, that's what you want to do. But sometimes it takes longer, and so you really get to know people, and really, I think the private practice is the space where it's easier to become emotionally involved, like emotionally impacted by your clients or patients.
Okay. Now, and it sounds like the road from BSW to master's to clinical licensure, that could be anywhere from 8+ years. And then you want to, you're branching out, that could take, 2 to 4, whatever. So this is like the career trajectory. What are any challenges or some challenges that you have faced that are pretty common across the board that a student may want to look out for or kind of keep their eye out for?
Good question. I think for me, anyway, I think it's the fear. So it all sounds good when you're thinking about what you want to do. And I always told myself, I'm not in it for the money, and it's okay. I don't care. I just want to help people. And that's all very romantic and idealistic, but, just to consider, okay, understanding that social workers, and especially I would say at the bachelor level, aren't compensated, extremely highly, I guess is one way to say it.
Sure.
And so you want to consider, okay, am I planning on working full time? And so I think the challenge would be trying to consider what your needs are and what your vision is for your future. Some people have absolutely no desire to be married or to settle down, and they just want to travel. And so, there are opportunities for social workers to be traveling, like with Red Cross, and you can do a lot of other things. But so just kind of thinking about what you would want to do. And again, the beautiful thing about a master's in social work is it's very easy to pivot. So if you get into something and you're like, yeah, when I graduated from grad school, I didn't want to settle down, but now after running around the globe for 2 years, I'm tired and I just want to, I want to work in hospital. Okay, you can. That's the beautiful thing about the degree, I think.
Was there ever a time where you felt, gosh, you came up against a wall and you're like, wow, is this really what I want to do? Or because it seems like working with people, and if you feel it, like for me, I get really emotionally involved sometimes. I wonder if that has ever kind of gotten to you, I guess.
Yes, Um, I mean, there are always, in every area that I've worked, there are the things that you kind of come up against that you have to figure out.
Yeah.
And what I've learned over the years is you can either sit around, like around the quote unquote water cooler and like complain about it, or you can, you know, think about ways to work the situation. Or like I have 4 children, 4 boys, and I always say, okay, you're arguing with me, but let's talk about solutions. Right. You know, let's change this conversation so that we're talking about solutions. And so I think no matter what area of social work you're in, you will come up against those things where it's like, this again. It's so frustrating. But then you just have to think of solutions. And once again, if it just gets to a point where you are getting nowhere, you can always pivot. And I think one thing I would say is, if you have even the slightest inclination that you would want to work in the schools, that requires an extra certification. So if you're in grad school and you're like, I mean, I'm not like headed there right now, but I could see myself doing that maybe when I have kids to be on their schedule or whatever, I would go for it right then and there, because I actually married an educator, and then after we were married for a couple of years and talking about having kids, I thought, it would be really great if I was on the same schedule as, you know, my kids and my husband are. And so I looked at going back, and I was like, no. I already owned a business, and so it wasn't going to be feasible to go back for the extra, because you have to take extra classes and you have to have an extra field placement where you're actually working in the schools for no pay for, you know, 1 or 2 semesters. And so that's a full-time unpaid position.
Oh, okay.
So if you want to do it while you're in school.
Okay. So for somebody, and this is my last question, for somebody who's thinking about it, getting into social work, what would you advise them to look out for, or maybe to contact to kind of get more information? What advice would you give to somebody?
I would talk to anyone you know who is in the field or in the area of social work that you're interested in. Have a conversation with them so that you can get a better picture of what it is that they do, just so that, again, you know, you want to kind of dispel some of those romantic ideas and just, you know, be sure that you understand what it is they do. And then they can kind of help guide you through what the state requires in your state, and kind of give you some ideas of what kind of education and testing will be involved. Okay.
So, Falk, thank you so much for sharing your experience. This is just the first step, I think, for anybody, really. I mean, because you think social worker, but no, then you have clinical, and then you have all these different areas you can go into. So we barely scratched the surface, I'm sure, but it is good information. So I really appreciate your time and your experience sharing that with me. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for listening. I hope you liked this episode. If you have a particular job you'd like me to look into, send me an email at workuniversityforyou@gmail.com. That's workuniversity, the number 4, the letter U, @gmail.com.